On a Saturday.
Oh,
All right.
Damien, just turn it on. The switch on the clicker.
Oh,
What's this bonus?
which one?
Yep, the sliding switch.
I know that was on.
Oh,
Battery dead?
it might be dead now because not working. Okay.
Maybe not. Next time. All right. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Brisbane Asia User Group. If you're here for something else, it's the wrong place. We are going to kick it off. So, thought we were.
That might be way quick. It's not working with this.
Probably because
I
I
don't
don't have focus. Let me just.
Oh.
Yeah,
Hey, that works.
it works.
It works. It's good. It's good. Awesome. Okay, so very soon we're going to have a presentation by Bronwen, who's sitting in the front here. So welcome, Bronwen. What happens when you put 1,000 architects in a room? It's chaos. Anyway, Bronwen, Director of Soul Solutions, developer based in Brisbane who likes to play with new technology, organiser of DDD, Microsoft MVP and Regional Director, WTM Ambassador. I can't say that word. And activator, and wildlife carer who loves to travel the world and take photos. So welcome, and we're really looking forward to the presentation. What are you looking like that for? Okay, so that's coming up very soon. This event is being recorded, so keep in mind microphones pick up even the slightest chatter. So feel free to talk. It's going to be recorded and played 1,000 times on YouTube. This is the news for, my mistake, April. Before we get going, a big thank you out there to Codify and Microsoft for sponsoring this event. Without them, this would not be possible. So Codify for the beer, the food, and Microsoft for the venue. Thank you very much. Community event, like I've been saying a lot, there are opportunities. We have had one for June sign up, so that's going to be awesome. If you guys have something you want to present, let us know. We'd love to hear from anybody. We don't mind what the presentation is. Really helps if it's Azure. If it's not Azure, we probably don't want it. But reach out, let us know. We want that community participation. There's an email there down the bottom of the screen. Use that and let us know. Okay, a couple of updates. Actually, it's more than a couple of updates this month. So as a result, I have not included them all. So fair warning. I've included a lot just for Ray, who's sighing at the front. We have network isolated Kubernetes service clusters preview. So this helps reduce that risk of data exfiltration, network isolation, simplifies setting up the outbound restrictions from a cluster. You can choose private link or API server VNet integration. So options there. AKS Cluster Advisor. So AKS went to town. I'm just going to prefix this. So they went to town this month, and there are a lot of things for AKS. So I've tried to sort of squeeze them together. I flicked the ones that I thought were boring, but the ones that kind of made it on this slide were there's new cost advisor recommendations. They, by default, AKS installs NVIDIA GPU drivers on those nodes. So you can now opt to not do that and install your own drivers. So if that's the thing that you want to do. Also, Azure Monitor application instance for Azure Kubernetes service workloads without modifying source code. Pretty cool. Also known as auto instrumentation. Terribly, it's only Java and Node, so it's not .NET, but I'm sure it's coming. So that's pretty cool. We've got Azure Monitor. Sorry. You can now monitor Azure Kubernetes with control plane metrics. So the just gives you those dashboards, some pretty cool stuff that you can do there. We've got, and AKS continues. We've got Azure Linux 3.0 got released. We've got AKS Communication Manager, and we've got Windows Node Pool. So those Quicklists eyebrows. You can speak, you're going to be recorded. So yeah, Node Pool, mix and match, sort of VM side, etc., etc. Message of the day. So the next one that got stuck in there without a reference. That allows you to sort of pop up on those nodes a message. So for the message of the day, you can use it for things like upcoming certs, let people know what's happening. Log Analytics Delete Data API. It's pretty cool. So if you've got stuff that's gone into Log Analytics, well, you can now get it out of Log Analytics. So it's no longer there. Perhaps something incorrectly went there. You can now redact that information. So that's pretty handy. I'm not saying that I need to use all of it, but if you did need to use it. Point in time restore for in Azure Cosmos DB with multi-region rights. So that's come in. It's pretty cool. It's into preview. Azure Container Apps, serverless GPUs with NVIDIA NIM. So you can now take advantage of those GPU enhanced capabilities. So I'm sorry, this is going for a long time, but it's not that bad. It's almost over. VM hibernation is now generally available for GPU virtual machines. Azure APM private link enabled origins from Azure Front Door. So you've seen this in the last couple of months. We've been dropping a bunch of new private link enabled origins for Azure Front Door. So we're just extending that out to APM. So that's pretty cool. And for those people, so that allows you to go from the edge to your endpoint without any traffic going over the public internet, which is pretty cool. All right. So sorry about the event slide. Couple of resources in here for you. We have the Slack team, we have the YouTube channel, there's some training information and some recommended blogs to have a look at. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bronwen.
So just to set the stage for what we're going to talk about tonight, first I just want you to imagine for a minute that you're the team leader in charge of a software development company where every single member on your team is the perfect expert. They're always available, they're exponentially scalable, and their experience level is amazing. This software development company now can design, they can develop, they can deploy sophisticated software systems at breakneck speeds that not seen before and with precision. You may have seen last year, you may have felt that 2024 is the year of the co-pilot. This year is shaping up to be the year of the AI agent. We started to see this if anyone's spent any time like looking at any of the VCs or startups around the world. There's a big change coming and a big trend coming to displace traditional jobs that we never thought possible before. And it's the startups themselves that are actually revolutionizing that. So they're starting to develop personas that replace jobs that we always thought were like going to be done by a human. Even in our own industry, we've started to see that with software developers, designers, even strategic thinking. So I just wanted to show you a couple of examples of those first. First, we have Devon. So they created a program that would successfully pass a bunch of the practical engineering interviews from leading AI companies. Within a few months, they said to be handling basic engineering jobs, replacing a bunch of junior staff, and lots of things to clean up the code base. Also in the news, people started to doubt it and said it was like quite very specific, and even the owner themselves said, you know, software in the real world is actually just very messy. Then we have Klarna. So they're a fintech company. So they used a bunch of agents to essentially handle a bunch of the customer service questions. So within the first few months, they were doing the equivalent of 700 full-time agents, and were replacing a bunch of full-time staff. I do wonder sometimes if maybe they needed to work on their system so that they didn't have that many people calling in. It seems like a lot of calls, but yeah, they did see a big drop in the number of actual human interactions they needed to do, equivalent to 700 full-time engineers, full-time employees. And then the last one is Rocketable. These guys have come out of Y Combinator. So their whole premise is they're going to buy companies and they're going to replace the whole staff in the company with AI. And that is their goal. So they're buying companies and replacing each bit of the working force with AI agents. And that's where we start from today. Who would consider themselves an architect? Yeah. How about developer? Yeah. Not developer, not only above. So if anyone has used any of the various chat programs, you may have used it to help you come up with a design. You may have had it look at a design. You may have used it to help you find an alternative design. So at the moment, you could sit there and make up a persona and give it skills of a very specific architect and get something out of it, whatever you wanted. But what if it wasn't just a single architect? What if you could query 1,000 different architectural experts from around the world with varying skill levels, varying experience, varying technology, and come up with the very best solution? It'd be really expensive, right? Also, anyone ever been in a meeting with more than 2 architects in the room? Yeah. Have you ever managed to get them to agree on a solution? No, sometimes. It can get quite heated. So we're going to try and do that today. So we're going to create 1,000 architects, get them to do some designs, and then we're going to lock them in a room, a virtual room, because, you know, it would be illegal and against fire regulations to lock people in physical rooms. And we're going to get them to agree on a solution. And we'll all go through the parameters as we go through it. So to do this, we're going to have a client. The client needs a specification. We need to make an architect and we need a design. So in full embracement of AI, we're going to invent a client. So I made Loom Ventures, and I purposely use Loom, L-O-O-M, because we know that AI likes to be quite fancy with some words. So you'll have noticed Loom Ventures, we're going to be a venture capital firm, and we're dedicated to empowering visionary entrepreneurs and early startups. Sounds good, right? About us, Loom Ventures, we believe in great ideas that are woven together, all by the AI. Our mission is to invest in groundbreaking technology and innovative business models that have potential to redefine industries. We see startups as intricate threads in the fabric of progress, and we are committed to helping founders weave their ideas into sustainable, high-impact businesses. Super cool. Then what and why. So we have what we do, why Loom Ventures. It all looks pretty standard, kind of what you kind of expect from a venture capital company. They do strategic partnerships. They look at founders first, strong ecosystem. And then finally, why would you want to join us? Whether you're a founder looking for a strategic partner or an investor seeking the next big opportunity, Loom Ventures is here to help you turn bold ideas into reality. Let's weave the future together. Love the AI here. So we have Loom Ventures. So what we then need to do before we can get someone to do something for us is we need a specification. So again, what we've done is we've asked the AI to generate us a specification based on the client that we just created. So we created a detailed spec for all aspects of the web application, keep it as functional requirements, and need to be sent out to various companies for a detailed design. So I can show you. So I just need my glasses. Give you a better look at that one. That's not projecting. Second. So I'll just scroll through so you have a bit of a look. So we've got our purposes and objectives, our user authentication. Sorry, I scrolled right to the end accidentally. Target audience that we have public, we have an internal, we have a website, we want home pages, we want to have different roles, we want to have a CMS to handle different applications and user role management. We want to have email notification, analytics, social media. We want to have good data handling. We want to be performance and scalable. We want to be SEO friendly, and then we want to be able to do a bunch of different reports. Kind of standard stuff that you expect from a spec. Moved. So we've got our specification. So now we need to design our architect. And our architect is going to have two parts. They need a personality. And then, because I can be quite a visual person, you need a profile image. So we started with a persona prompt. So we wanted to create a high quality persona in a JSON format for a software design, architecture, and security expert, using the following attributes to create a realistic person to be used for LLMs to ensure that thinking design choices and language of that expert. So yeah, we've given it a bunch of the things that we want them to look at, and then we've given them an example JSON output there. So what that's done for this particular person is it's spat out an ID. They're from Equatorial Guinea. We've got Miguel. He's got his alias is Secure Dev Master. He's got 15 years of experience. He's in cybersecurity. He's a software architect. All sorts of things, interesting things there. But his tech stack is things like Python, Java, Docker, and Azure. Then for the image, generate a realistic professional profile headshot photo in a simple background with no extra design elements and a 1:1 aspect ratio for the same persona. So this is Miguel. So together we have made our architect. He prefers microservices with containerization. Architect number one. So then what we need to do is we need to get Miguel to make us a design. So as the following persona, so as Miguel produced the detailed design for the specification, giving him a persona, and they want the detailed design, functional specifications for Loom. The document is designed as a blueprint, and then we've given it the specification that we've developed before. And what that will output is a design in a particular format. And we can show you his. Does anyone want to see his in particular? Yep, cool. Oh, my mouse is gone somewhere funny. Well, actually, I can't easily get his. I've replaced it. Sorry. That is his in the background there, which you won't be able to see. I'll have to fix that for next time. But so he's done a design. It has a little diagram up top. He's done a security architecture. He's got zero trust model, least privilege, data protection, etc. I can show you the one that he's done later on, which is a better version. That was just the first one. But we want to make 1,000 of them. We want 1,000 architects, so we want them to be different. So how do we do that? We want them to have diverse views. So we want diverse genders, we want diverse country backgrounds, and then we want a range of different technology experiences. So for the gender, I asked the internet, and this time I think I believe it. So for every 101 males, there is 100 females. So to round that down, I decided that we just go with, for this particular example, we're going to go with a 50-50 split on gender.
We're still going on 2 genders.
Yes, 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 2 genders for this particular use case. Right.
Just bring the front country.
Then we have, we want a diverse set of country and backgrounds. So does anyone know how many countries there are in the world?
About 200.
About 200?
110.
210?
43.
243? Any other guesses?
As opposed to nations or any other federally.
Ooh, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Any other guesses?
Including islands and penguins.
Islands and penguins, yes, islands and penguins. Everyone, yeah, okay, so actually, you were all correct, depending on which database you want to use. The answer could go anywhere between 195 and over 300, depending on which of these particular standards you want to use. But for our example, we decided that we would use Pi country, which is has 249 countries, which nicely almost divides by 1,000 neatly. And but so we're going to get a few bonuses from a few extra little countries. And then for the diverse set of views, we didn't want to hard code this or force it. So we want to make the LLM come up with the different personas and different experiences and stuff. So we wanted to see what it did. So if we went and it churned for a bit and we generated 1,000 architects. So let's meet our architects. I can show you a much nicer high-res version of this. There we are. There's 1,000 architects in that photo. And when we can, we can zoom in and we can play I've got a little animation here that'll play through them. Took a while for that to generate. This is using DALL-E 3, which is not the best, I must admit. So has anyone got any thoughts when they sort of have a little bit of a look at that picture? No comments?
Ryan Gosling.
You got Ryan Gosling? Yeah.
I was wondering why you had the countries.
Sorry?
I was wondering why you added countries to this, to diversify.
Why did I add countries?
Yeah, what does country add to the?
Yeah. Yeah, so depending on what country you might be born in or living in, you're going to have very different experiences. Like somewhere in Australia will have different laws and security thoughts to someone who may be living in Europe versus someone who might live in Africa versus someone who might live in like Central America versus, you know, the penguins down in Antarctica. They're going to have very different. What I noticed when I looked at a lot of these photos, and if I go back to the zoomed out version, sorry, get that for you. The whole tone on them was all very similar. And yes, there is like a diverse range of people there, but then they are quite average. I would describe almost all of them as average build. I would describe all of them as average to medium, you know, average to maybe slightly above decent looking. There's a lot of like consistently good side cuts there. There's not a lot of people with bald hair. There's not a lot of people with crazy colored hair. They end up being quite average, even though we've got an obviously very diverse skin tone, hair length, hair color. We've got people with glasses. That's what I noticed when I looked at that. When we, sorry.
So you tried picking these architects from one country to see if the same result is repeated with the color tone, with the personality, the hair you're talking about.
Yeah, so I can show you some more in a minute. We did have like, so there's 4 from each country and quite a few of them are quite different. And I found in like the New Zealand one, there's one that's definitely someone who looks married, whereas in Australia, they were all quite Caucasian. So it was kind of interesting to see what it generated as the users. When we did this though, it's interesting that I tripped up the responsible AI policy a few times trying to generate these profiles. Not quite sure, but why? I have a few guesses. I found though that if I kept trying, eventually they would work. So it took me, some of them it took me 3 goes and it eventually worked. So it needed to be retryable to be able to generate these profile pictures. Little side tip there. I started to think there were a few things awry as well. So we had a little bit of a look at the persona makeup and the speciality. And we noticed that the graph was sort of skewed down this end here. So we ended up with a lot of people that were zero trust architecture, into security, cloud security. It's going to sort of start to warp our designs. Similar with the persona makeup by industry, there was like a big graph end down here. And we found that a lot of them were cybersecurity, so much cybersecurity. And we could see it as we started generating designs, what would happen there. And that came down, I think, to the way that we did the prompt in giving it some example JSON, which I think polluted the pool. Here's another one of persona makeup, experience and country. Seem to be sort of fairly okay. To fix our problem though, reasoning models came along. So before that, we were using GPT models. So the new reasoning models, you can equate them to a planner. So the planners, they call them the O series. So you might have seen the O1, O3 minis versus what they consider the workhorses. So probably the ones that everyone's used up until this point. So the generative pre-trained transformers, the GPTs. The difference with the reasoning model, the best way that they described it in simple terms was that it's like a senior co-worker where you can give them the work and the goal to achieve and trust them to work out the details. Whereas the GPT model was more like your junior developer or co-worker, and they needed to perform best with like very specific instructions and specific output, which you will have seen in the way you've done your prompts up until now. So the basic criteria to decide between the two, or the upshots, is like the GPT models tend to be faster and cheaper. They're very good at handling very well-defined tasks. Whereas the O series models, especially if you like look at the difference in price, 15 cents versus $1.10, big price difference. The O series are better at making reliable decision-making type tasks and work through ambiguity and complexity. So we decided to redo everything with a reasoning model to see what difference that made. So the recommendations for when you're looking at your prompts, there's a whole list, but a couple of the ones that really stood out was before you would just give it a single prompt. Now you can section it off and have a very specific developer message versus which is the new system message versus what you want it to do. You should keep your prompts very simple and direct, and you don't need to do the chain of thought prompts anymore. Instead of giving it, so in our example that we had the JSON file as an example. So you don't have to give it one-shot learning anymore. You can give it zero-shot learning or a few-shot learning only if needed, and provide guidelines and be specific about your goal as opposed to exact details of the task. So what we did then was went back and had a look at our persona prompt, and it was very similar. So we created a persona prompt in JSON format, and it should vary in skill level from amateur expert, but this time we didn't give it any JSON examples. We just gave it the sorts of things it could consider. So this guy went away, and then we fed it in a list, like we fed it in parameters of the country and the person, because that was the one we knew that we wanted to hard code, and years of experience, and we sort of let it work out the rest. And then this time, instead of giving it the format, we just told it to spit it out in JSON and work it out. And the big difference you will see when you use the actual API as well is now there's a few extra parameters. You have to upgrade to the latest version of the API. They now have this reasoning effort and max completion tokens. For a lot of ours, we set them to low because it costs less and takes a lot less time. But you can go from low, medium, and high, and that'll, if you ever see it spit itself out, like it'll how long it spends thinking and talking to itself about what it's doing. So we reran that over all the personas again. So crashed them all, did a new 1,000. And the variety was a lot better the second time around. So we ended up with a bunch of software architects. We ended up with junior software engineers. We ended up with security specialists. We also decided to redo our design prompt as well, just slightly. So we took the persona and we moved that up into developer prompt and then gave it the specification, very similar. So just a few of the, like when it spat out 1,000 different designs, there's heaps of variety in there. So some of the ones that I thought were kind of quite cute, were some of them used ASCII art in their diagrams. So yeah, there's some ASCII art there. A lot of them did mermaid diagrams and like charts and stuff, which looked pretty cool. I wasn't expecting it to be quite that detailed with like full on user flows and sequence diagrams and stuff like that. I'll show you a few more a little bit later. So now we've got our 1,000 designs. We don't want to have to read them, right? Like that's the worst thing. Like it's too much choice. So how do we go about working out which is the best one? And how do we make these guys sit in a room and, you know, decide which is the best one? So we came up with a game, and then you can come up with your own version of the game as well. But this is what we decided for the first one. So because of the 1,000, we want to whittle them down pretty quickly. The first round, we're going to do a group round. So we're going to put the designs into groups of 4, and then each group of 4 is going to be reviewed by 4 of the other architects. And then the winner of that group round will then progress to a knockout round. With me? Yep. So then when we get to the knockout rounds, each pair of designs, because we have a little bit more time, we're going to review it by 7 different architects. And each of these rounds, you can't ever review your own code. Good idea. And then each of those winners will progress to the next round. Classic knockout. Now you could increase the number, but 7 I thought was a fair number. And then for the finals, we're gonna, is it Survivor where every time one comes back at the end and gets a vote? All the architects come back and vote on the last 2 designs. So everyone's been knocked out, but they come back at the end and resurrected to vote on which is the best design overall. Everyone clear on the rules? Yeah. Okay, so before we do that, we have to look at what our review prompt was. So as a persona, we want to assess the design and we want to give it the customer requirements and give it the specification. And then here we can see that we're going to mark it out of 100 and we've got a bunch of like things we're reviewing by. So we're doing security, we're giving it performance, maintainability, and then it has a rating. And then at the end, they have to tell us why they rank, like they end up ranked, and then they have to give us a little bit of a description as to why. So here's an example review. So we had, you know, player 874, player 307, player 174, player 103, all got reviewed. And they scored between 95 and 80. And the review was that 784 was a highly experienced architect, presented a detailed, modular, scalable architecture, blah, blah, blah. And then goes on and describes all the different reasons why it was better than the other. And it does that for each and every single review. Cool. What I noticed, it was interesting when I looked through the reviews, because everyone's quite different, right? There was a bit of a pattern. So, and people would put in their name. Let's go back to the non-Zoomy view. And they might put in their roles, like the roles junior software developer. And I thought, I wonder what happens if I take out that data. And it actually affected the score by 15 basis points. So I took that review. That's the original review. They came in 4th with a score of 70. And my highlights of their review were: lastly, design 999 focused primarily on front end and UI aspects, suitable for a junior developer's viewpoint, but lacks comprehensive back end integration, blah, blah, blah. Took their experience out, took their job title out, reran the same thing, and you'll see everyone else's scores are the same, and he's moved up to 3rd. And his score is now 85 instead of 70. And no longer is it about him being a junior software developer. It's strong in its component-based front-end centric architecture, but it's slightly less depth on the back-end security and scalability. I thought that was quite fascinating. And segue into next month. I will talk about this a little bit more next month when I'm talking about bias in coding generated tasks. So if you want to hear more, come to that talk next month. Yeah.
Yes, the method out of the conversations that company was there was research in early 2024. They call it forest of laws. Just something to add. If anyone is interested in this system, how it works, it's forest of laws.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this, but if when all the architects came back to do the final round review, did they have any idea or memory of who knocked them out in previous round?
Who knocked them out? I probably don't know. So I ran this, like we tested this a few times before we ran it on everyone, right? So the other checks and balances that we sort of did. So we did a blind review of a set of 4. So I took one of the sets and read through them myself and decided how I would rank them. And then as an extra check, we really forced it to generate one that was like a WordPress design, right? Something really simple. And we just wanted to make sure that the score came out quite low compared to like something that would have lots of security and blah, blah, blah. So that we, wasn't just picking random numbers that were in the high 90s all the time. Things that you can do to just double check that you're on the right track there. So are we ready to play the game? So,
The question,
yes.
how much of testing did the analysis of assessment to classify it as a good design? Did they do that testing, or how did the classification, the ranking was evaluated?
So it's using their own experience. So based on their architectural experience, they're ranking the designs
Important
against.
to know what the background experience was then. So when you remove the background,
Oh, of the other person? No, it's based on, so the reviewer is looking based on their own experience as whatever they're specialized in. So like you might be a security expert or whatever. You read the design.
so the person knew what the other.
Yeah. But if the other person, like similar to when you submit your resume, if you go and put like that you went to university 30 years ago versus 2 years ago, they have an idea that you might be 20 versus 40. And it's, yeah, skewed.
It looks like a resume evaluation of within that design property.
Yeah. So we went away and obviously regenerated all those images again after we did the persona change. So here's our new set of 1,000 architects. Still similar design flaws in that they're still very average looking. So 1,000 architects going into the group round at the end. Bunch of them get knocked out. This is who remains. This is going into the knockout rounds. So first round, second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, sixth round. Oh, we've got down to our final 8 because, you know, we didn't want to watch them all night. So I think here we've got an interesting selection of countries. Does anyone know where all these countries are?
Yeah. Except for the statues of Baba.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of some of them either. Anyway, I'll show you where they are in a minute. We've got a fair, like, you know, there's none of them are in the same country. We have, you know, 5 women and 3 men. So we've got a decent range of genders. But just so you know, this is where they are in the world. So it looks like the top 8 architects in the world kind of hang out in the Caribbean. So it sounds like a good place to go and move to. Did anyone want to see any of these in particular of these architects? Oops, before I go back. Or we can keep going. So down to our final 8.
Probably the Finland one.
You want to see the Finland one? Hang on, I need to cheat and look at the number again. Finland is 303. Internet. As you can see, we generated a lot of designs. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So this is 303s from Finland. So years of experience, 17. Oops, this is really fiddly. We've got a render display, which is awesome. But they've done a bunch of made diagrams there. They've done a public website. They've done user authentication role management. They've done like user access website. They've done like security. They've done a workflow on how you'd authenticate. They talk about their CMS and they want a WYSIWYG editor and CMS, and here's a diagram of how they would do that. Who they would integrate with. So they would use social media APIs. They would use like SMTP email services. Bit of a diagram of how they would do that. Workflow design, how they'd like yes/no diagrams, made. All the security stuff that they'd take into consideration. Incident response, SEO, tech stack, so Java, Python, GraphQL, Docker, Elasticsearch, WYSIWYG, SQL for structured data, NoSQL for caching. They would use CI/CD, they'd use Terraform, they would use centralized logging.
But could you do a comparative meta-analysis of the last 7? So we cannot.
You want to see all of them?
Yeah,
Um,
No.
We could at the end if we have time.
yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise,
Next month.
for the next month. The next month is completely different topic.
It would be good to know in comparison, but
Yeah.
we did what?
But they said that you could feel free to reach out to them for further clarification. So you might be able to go have a chat with them at Code Sisu.
So did you know?
Yeah, the personas in GitHub.
No, they all say that.
Did you give them a template that they needed to write their?
No.
They were just on their own, would come up with this.
Which is why the variety is wild. Like you get ASCII art, you get graphs, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
And you can put that in the template.
Ended up on the wrong one. Sorry, we did that one.
I wonder who was the winner.
You became it. Okay, so we knocked down to 4. So we're left with Layla, who's from the United Arab Emirates. You've got Jasper, Amelie. I have to work out how to pronounce these people's names, and Elena from Switzerland. Anyone of these taking any fancy?
Favorite? I will get this back.
Yeah, does anyone want to guess which one wins? You can see if you're right at the end to have a favorite.
I will have the Luxembourg.
You want to see you're going for Luxembourg?
I will actually.
Okay.
We can vote, can we?
You can vote. Don't know if it'll change the result.
Oh.
Then we get our final 2. Down to the finalists. We have Layla versus Elena. Both with 16 years experience. Both fairly senior people. Both very similar tech stack. So let's have a look at their solutions because these are the 2 we're picking from. So 934 and 864. Internet. So this again, she's put her experience in there. It's her overview. She's also got rendering issues. Design elements, more. She's got Mermaid, more diagrams, CMS, unified search bar, social media integration. They've gone with CMS, folder-based, user management, responsive design, load balancing using CDNs and Redis, Kubernetes. This is how she'd set up her high-level workflow diagram for a UI. We go to a Postgres MongoDB for there. Then do email notifications. This is how she'd do her code commit, CD pipeline, QA environment. It's a bit more thorough. End-to-end data encryption, GDPR, tech stack. We've got Java with React, Docker Kubernetes, blah, blah, blah. Enter report. 864, pretty thorough. And 934. Yep, pick the right one. Layla. She's got a nice table of contents with links that tend to not work. She's got a little nice summary at the front. I liked hers because hers had a nice little table with at the beginning that she wanted to use Docker, AWS, Postgres, Jenkins, all interesting sets of diagrams. And then I like hers because it's got ASCII art. It's kind of neat. Grids, also very long, public access. All her diagrams are done in ASCII art. So yeah, I think that's why she gets bonus points from me on this one. How she would do content publishing, authentication, how she would use the service and what its purpose is. Conclusion. So who is going for 934 Layla?
What did we just?
The one you just looked at was Layla. The last one with the ASCII art is Layla. You're going ASCII art. Who's going for the Swiss lady with the nice? Oh, everyone. Interesting.
To go for her because she goes to Zoo Cloud platforms.
Oh, you have to go. It's influencing.
Experience.
What's her experience?
But then it's AWA. Combine it.
So, just to recap, we started with 1,000. We went through the group rounds, we went through the rounds, still going, and we're down to the final 2. And the winner is Layla.
Zoo Cloud.
So you might be interested into how many GPUs I exploded doing that. This is just on the we use O3 Mini for this. This doesn't include all the pictures because that's on a different deployment. So yeah, we use 50 million tokens, which is not too bad. Who knows what the cache token count is? Because it reckons I use 1.6 billion cache tokens. Like, can't be right. Anyway, that was a bit of fun, right? So how would you take this to the next level, or what would you change? You could do so many things, right? So they just reviewed it and gave it a score. Like, you could do a feedback loop. You could take that review and then you could give them a second pass at it, right? You could add a human in the loop and give feedback at different rounds. You could evaluate the last 4. There's so many possibilities, but we were doing some simple prompts that called the API. What you probably really then want to start looking at is how you might start to use an AI agent. They enable the large language models to like perform actions, extending their capabilities by giving it access to tools and knowledge. So an LLM can perform an action, give it access to tools and knowledge. So you could do things like check it into GitHub and then it gets it back out and it makes some edits and the next architect comes and does their speciality and enters their section. All sorts of possibilities.
How would you feed a design and come out with a concept of how deployable it is or what it would cost to deploy, right? So the best design in the world might cost so much you can't afford it. So maybe they'll go for second.
Yeah, so its knowledge might be that it goes and like looks up all the Azure calculations, right? And plugs everything that they mentioned in and works out how much it costs.
Yeah, you do that.
Right now, no. Not this second, no. That might be like in the future. I can't do that right this second. Yeah, so there's all those sorts of things, right? You can give it that access to the knowledge. So if you had that ability, you could hit an API and give it the information, give it back the cost, and then you can do a cost comparison analysis. And the other thing is you might need a feedback loop with the user, right? Because you come back and go, hey, this is awesome. And it's going to cost you $10 billion. You're like, no, my budget's like $1,000. You're getting the WordPress site, right? So when you might want to use agents is when you've got these open-ended problems or these multi-step processes where you want to do improvements over time. So the best thing to do is be able to give it goals and tasks. So if you've got an end goal, you've got a bunch of tasks, and you can give it to an agent. And agent doesn't always have to be an AI agent either. Agent could, like, you could replace that sometimes with, you just want to call a piece of code that sends an email, or you might want to call a piece of code that gives a result. So how you would translate that, we want to get the best architecture for the client. We've got generating persona with the persona agent. We've got a picture from the picture agent, a design from the design agent, and a review design from a review agent. But this could change depending on how you want to set it up. And you might want to hand off. So you might want to do step 1, hand that over to the next agent, depending on your design. So you could start with your end goal, have a task-based agent with hands off to the next task-based agent. So we get the best architecture for the client. We start with persona. You don't have to. When it's finished, then you might want to do design. More likely you want to run those in parallel. So you would actually instead have the design agent, and then when it's finished, you would do the review. So lots of information. I haven't done the agent as an actual example yet because this is really in flux at the moment, and it's going to keep changing and improving. So I haven't actually done this example up for real as an agent, and there'll be heaps of new features coming, I'm sure, when we get to build later in the year. So, but my key takeaways when you're starting to look at these things is like, I did these manually because you need to like try them out first. So make your process retriable. Look at like, because you might get content filters like we did with the prompts. You might get rate limited. So when you're hitting these AI APIs, like you have a rate limit. If you hit that, you need ways to handle it. Use some of those responsible AI principles. So have man in the middle. So we had like verifying. We were checking things that were happening. You might want someone to be an extra reviewer to verify you're on the right track. Run your graphs, check your data, have different ways to verify you that it's not gone off left when you want to be facing this way. Start small before going big and spending big dollars. So yeah, when we did the reviews, like we ran a few examples and checked that it was on the right track before we let it loose on the whole 1,000 and blew our budget. The models and the technology are improving every day. Like it seems like a new model comes out every other day and there's so many to choose from. Make each part of your process replaceable. So we could use DALL-E for the images. You might still want to use a GPT for part of it, and then you might want to use a reasoning model that costs more for another separate task. And you can split them out as new and better things come along. And obviously, the best time to start is yesterday, and the second part, best time to start is now. So here is a QR code that will give you some resources that I haven't filled out yet. The page there, because I've been madly putting this together, but I will be updating it to add a bunch more links. And depending on what you are all interested in actually seeing, whether or not you want to see the whole GitHub repo or there's anything in particular that you're interested in, let me know and I can add that to the resources link as well. Yeah, thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? But
How much? How much does it cost you?
I don't actually know. So the one advantage of being a MVP and RD for Microsoft is that I get $1,000 US credit a month. But I don't get to see the cost model. So I burn through credit and I don't know how much I spent. So all I know is how many tokens I use. I didn't hit any like, hey, you run over and got a bill, but I don't know how much money I burnt. And I've been trying to spread it out.
And in terms of time, how much time did you put it in?
How much time? Well, John helped me out a lot. How much time do you reckon we spent on this? It's quite a few weekends, right?
It was pretty fun though.
Yeah, we had good fun doing it. Like it was fun, like just watching all those images come up, and then like a designer come up. He's like, "Oh, this one's really cool. This one's got ASCII art. This guy's done like this weird thing, and what if we tweak this?" So yeah.
Part was the most difficult one that you found?
What did we get stuck on?
No particular.
I think they're trying to get them to compare. So
Yeah, trying to find picking the right. Yeah, we had lots of thoughts on how to get them to evaluate it.
if you think about it, we've used this latest Premiere model. You had O3.
Yeah.
You were getting them to create these designs, and they're actually all pretty good.
Yeah.
And so you were getting, I think when you first ran it, like they were all getting
Like
98.
98s, yeah.
It's like, how do you compare something so close? Like they're not terrible.
And then I looked at it and went, Kubernetes again. Over-architected.
Maybe guidance, but maybe trying something like Notebook LM, just drop all of the architectures and reviews in, and then you can actually turn it into a podcast. So we can discuss all the things which would be very interesting to see.
I was thinking of using the picture and the persona and the design and creating like the 3D like version avatar where they can speak and they could read out the design and discuss it. But I was like, it's really bordering on my like level of I don't like it's too a bit dodgy, like fake person, deep fake. I like it's just this like on my heart where I was like, oh, I want to do this, it's so cool, but like
Yeah, it's interesting because then it can kind of like have partners.
yeah.
Between two people and they discuss.
They could take it each. That'd be cool.
But it's like a summary of all that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because sometimes they point out very specific difference that is might be a bit more unique, which you find particularly interesting. Again.
Yeah.
It's good how it's got like the two talking between each other. So if one gives a point and then will say, oh, but what about blah, 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 or yeah. Very, very fascinating. Right.
More or less.
Maybe you could have added.
So what was the name of that for the recording?
Notebook LM.
Notebook LS?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's technical.
That's okay. We can use like anything, right?
If you run into rate limiting, so how did you handle it?
I didn't actually get rate limited. The main one I got was the content filtering. It tended to walk at someone who had cybersecurity experience in places like Afghanistan. Don't know why, but yeah, ran it, failed, ran it, failed, ran it again, went through fine.
But you had a Chinese architect.
Yep.
Taiwan.
Oh, was it? I thought it said China. Oh, okay.
There would have been China in there as well. Like we have every country. Obviously the penguins were fine.
Maybe it's just at random checking the four-person architects itself.
Yeah.
Some of those rounds, if you would have chosen the same, the double testing.
Yeah.
With the architect.
Yeah, so I did a blind one myself. But yeah, my other idea was like I was going to see like reach out and see if anyone wanted to submit their own architecture, and I would put it into the list and see how it went against a real person.
Is there, taking the example of your photo, the pictures generated were average. Is it the case though that a left field, really optimized, out of the box thinking solution might get voted out because it's outside the standard deviation of central groups?
Very possible, right? So you'll notice unit 1, we're like senior,
Yeah.
16 years experience, and yeah, I need to experiment with it more because I haven't done enough runs. But it definitely, like, their experience definitely skews definitely skews it, right? And that goes also to human bias. Like we have the same. Like if you're reading something from a junior, yeah.
What if you had hobbies, for instance, that could give input about creativity? So that could mean as well, even to the pictures.
Yeah, did we have? I can't remember. I had a bunch of features on there. Hang on. I didn't show you all of them. 1 second. I'll get you up a proper persona. See.
Some pictures look like they had their police mugshot.
Oh yeah, some of them are terrible. And then in full transparency, for the last few, we redid them in like the new ChatGPT image generator. So because I was like, these look really terrible for the final thing. I was like, the ones that you guys can see, I wanted to show you ones that were half decent quality. I don't know if we did hobbies. We did a lot of other stuff. We did like debate, collaboration. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, we did like decision-making style, approach to trade-offs, writing style. We did like favorite thought leaders. I don't have that picture anymore, but we did one that when we had it really skewed to the cybersecurity people, there was one name that was like off the charts that everyone was referring to that I keep meaning to go and look up who it is because I hadn't heard of them before. Yeah, so yeah, to your point, you could add more stuff like that as well. Because like if they have a very different background, like if and hobbies and
if they love painting,
yeah,
probably someone could probably be a different person. Loves sporting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to incorporate that into the design because, like, I wonder if those people would make it a much prettier architecture as well. Yeah, but like, yeah, I didn't feed those ones in, but yeah, so you could make this whatever you want, right? It's just an example, but yeah, totally. Anyone?
When you were doing the initial evaluations, you had the 4 different designs.
Yeah.
And you were scoring those. So I thought you said you had 4 architects reviewing those 4 designs.
Yeah.
How did you get the 4 architects into one AI model to communicate with each other?
They're not talking to each other.
Okay.
So they're each independently scoring.
Right.
And each ranking, and then we add the scores up to see who wins.
When you are analysing all the skews, we're using AI to do that analysis and that graphing for you.
No, we were being, because obviously time, we were like, we were like just grabbing a bunch of that JSON output, right? Because it's all nicely consumable and putting it into like, I think we were using a lot of it, we were using just like pandas and stuff like that, just digitally scanning and stuff like that. I mean, for the designs, it was really obvious as we started reading them because it was like, zero trust. Kubernetes is like, oh, these are all really similar. What have we done? Oh no, they're all like cybersecurity experts and only into this one thing, and then confirmed it with the graph. Great.
And is that something that you would think about doing in the future? Is like put all the designs in and go, what are the potential flaws? Like what are the commonalities? How is this skewed? Like, would you give that to LLM to?
Yeah. Because that's another thing you could do, right? So, e.g., especially once you go the agent type model, right? Then what you can do is you could get them to do the similar thing, like go and find the commonalities, go and find what they've missed in the specification. Like you can use it to do like those review type loops, especially with those racing models. They get quite interesting, like the depth that they can go to as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try to check if it keeps or Gemini. That's not.
I haven't used it on this. So something I'm doing on the like playing with a couple of different models. This one I was just using like O3 Mini and O1 and
Might be similar as well, but all methods.
The output, so you maybe in groups or initially maybe you could inject a customer into that, like a persona of the customer instead.
That's a good idea, actually. Get that to break it.
Yeah.
There you go, John. Just off the weekend.
It's the name of the talk. If you unlocked 1,000.
Stays in with the customer.
Well, you should perhaps have a stakeholder, not just the customer.
Yes.
And you also get a result that no one wanted.
Yeah. Still no decision.
I was surprised that because in your rhetoric around Loom had all the fabricy type stuff and so on, I was waiting for a design to come take that and weave something in about.
I haven't read all 1,000, so they might be one in there. So if you really want to go read every one of them, I flicked through a lot of them. I guess the other thing that I found interesting that is another side note is they were all written in US English. Even the Australian designs had Zs in them. So I found that interesting as well. And I didn't say they were American.
Google Translate.
Yeah, Google Translate. Yeah, I was like, oh, Australian, didn't pick up that they were Australian, right in Australian English. Fail.
There is no Australian English if you're talking Copilot.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Bronwen. That was fantastic, as always. Your talks are always amazing. So yeah, thanks. And I'm pleased that the doors are still open and we're not locked in.
Yeah. Unless they block the elevator, right?
Well, that's possible too. Anyway, we always appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yeah, you already know now that next month our talk is going to be Bronwen again. So please come. It's fun to talk about fires. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Everybody have a safe trip home. If I can just ask you if you brought a bottle or something in with you, if you could just bring it outside, that would really help people clean it. And great, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.